The handshake between a car manufacturer and a customer used to end at the dealership door. You paid your money, you received your keys, and what you did with that machine on your own time was your business. That unwritten contract defined the automotive world for over a century. You could repaint it, turbocharge it, turn it into a dragster or let it rust in a barn, and the company that built it wouldn't say a word. But those days are over. We have officially entered an era where the relationship between legacy automakers and the people who buy their cars is fracturing along a new digital fault line. On one side stand the multi-billion-dollar corporations who view their vehicles as intellectual property. On the other stand the YouTubers, influencers, and rebuild artists who view those same vehicles as raw material for content. The opening shot in this war wasn't fired in a courtroom. It was fired in a YouTube video when Freddie Tavarish Hernandez revealed that McLaren had effectively excommunicated his rebuilt P1 hypercar. This wasn't a minor disagreement over warranty terms. It was a declaration that the age of passive ownership is over. To understand why this moment matters, you have to forget everything you thought you knew about who really owns a car. For the better part of 2 decades, automotive YouTube operated in a kind of gray area harmony with the industry. Car companies loved the exposure. A glowing review from a popular creator could send stock prices up. A viral video of a new supercar lapping the Nürburgring was worth more than any magazine spread. Brands like Ford, Lamborghini, and Porsche began flying YouTubers to exclusive launch events, treating them with the same reverence once reserved for top-tier journalists from Road and Track or Car and Driver. But this relationship was always built on a fragile assumption that the creator would play by the rules, that they wouldn't dig too deep, that they wouldn't show the oil leaks, the electrical gremlins, or the catastrophic engine failures that happen when you actually drive these machines like they were designed to be driven. For a while, the arrangement worked. Then came the rebuilders. A new breed of creator emerged who didn't just want to test cars, they wanted to resurrect them. They began buying salvage title wrecks, flood-damaged supercars, and abandoned project cars that manufacturers had written off as dead. Channels like Tavarish Rich Rebuilds and B is for Build built millions of subscribers by doing something the auto industry hated. They showed the public exactly what lies beneath the carbon fiber. They exposed that these untouchable hypercars are often held together with the same fragile electronics and brittle plastic connectors found in economy sedans. They documented the arrogance of manufacturers who refuse to sell basic repair manuals. And in doing so, they shifted the power dynamic entirely. No longer did McLaren or Ferrari control the narrative of their own machines. The narrative was now being written in a garage, filmed on an iPhone, and broadcast to 10 million people. The specific case involving McLaren and Tavarish's P1 is fascinating not because of the legal threats, but because of the sheer audacity of the project. To understand the stakes, you have to know what the McLaren P1 actually is. This wasn't just a supercar. It was a hybrid hypercar, a technological marvel that combined a twin-turbo V8 with a Formula One-derived electric motor. Only 375 units were ever built, and each one was hand-assembled with the kind of precision usually reserved for surgical instruments. McLaren never intended for these cars to be repaired by anyone other than themselves. When Tavarish bought his P1, it was a catastrophe. The car had been submerged in salt water during Hurricane Sandy, a level of damage that most insurance companies consider total annihilation. Salt water doesn't just stain the carpets, it corrodes wiring harnesses, destroys battery management systems, and turns complex circuit boards into green dust. Any rational person would have parted the car out. But Tavarish saw an opportunity. He saw a chance to do what no independent mechanic had ever done: rebuild a P1 from the dead, entirely outside of McLaren's ecosystem, and film every painful second of it. For 2 years, viewers watched him struggle. They watched him hunt for proprietary bolts that cost hundreds of dollars. They watched him try to bypass encrypted software designed to prevent exactly this kind of independent repair. They watched him fail, succeed, and fail again. And then the warning came. McLaren didn't sue Tavarish, at least not publicly. Instead, they did something arguably more menacing. They sent a formal warning regarding the use of their branding and the misrepresentation of their vehicle. The subtext was clear. You may own the physical wreck sitting in your garage, but you do not own the story of the P1. You do not own the badge. You do not have our permission to show a Frankenstein version of our flagship hypercar to millions of people and imply that it represents our engineering standards. From McLaren's perspective, this was entirely logical. The P1 is a halo car. It exists to make people believe that McLaren is the pinnacle of automotive achievement. If Tavarish's rebuilt car catches fire, or if its hybrid system fails catastrophically on camera, the average viewer doesn't think, well, that's because it was flood damaged and rebuilt by a YouTuber. They think McLarens are unreliable. That association, no matter how unfair, is a billion-dollar liability. Car brands have spent decades building trust. They are not about to let a salvage title influencer unravel that trust for the sake of entertainment. But the problem for McLaren is that the law is not entirely on their side. In most jurisdictions, the principle of first sale doctrine dictates that once you sell a physical good, you lose the right to control how it is used, modified, or displayed. Tavarish wasn't counterfeiting McLaren parts. He wasn't claiming his rebuilt car was factory original. He was simply documenting reality. And that act of documentation, that relentless transparency, is what terrifies the legacy auto industry more than any lawsuit. This conflict goes far deeper than one YouTuber and one hypercar. It represents a fundamental clash between the old world of mechanical ownership and the new world of digital control. Modern cars are no longer just machines. They are rolling computers. The average new vehicle contains over 100 million lines of code, more than a fighter jet. Every system, from the brakes to the steering to the infotainment screen, is governed by software. And software is the ultimate tool of control. Manufacturers are increasingly using encryption and digital rights management to lock independent mechanics out of their own vehicles. You want to replace a battery in a Tesla? You need proprietary software to tell the car that the new battery exists. You want to fix the transmission in a newer BMW? You need a subscription to the manufacturer's diagnostic tool. This isn't accidental. It is a deliberate strategy to force owners back into dealership servitude for the life of the vehicle. The right to repair movement has been fighting this battle for years, but YouTubers have turned it into a spectator sport. When Rich Rebuilds bought a salvage Tesla and struggled to get the computer to accept new parts, he didn't just grumble about it in a shop. He made a video that got 3 million views. He showed the absurdity of a company claiming you own a car while simultaneously holding the keys to its digital brain. He turned a technical grievance into a public relations nightmare for Tesla. And that is the superpower of the automotive YouTuber. They don't need a legal team to win. They just need an audience. The manufacturers are fighting back now because they realize they have lost control of the narrative. For decades, the only way to see a crashed Ferrari or a flooded Lamborghini was if a tow truck driver leaked a grainy photo to a blog. Now, the owner of that wreck is monetizing it. They are turning tragedy into entertainment. They are showing the gritty, ugly, financially ruinous side of exotic car ownership that the glossy brochures carefully hide. This democratization of information is a nightmare for brands like McLaren, Ferrari, and Lamborghini, whose entire business model depends on the illusion of invincibility. Ferrari, in particular, has a notorious history of policing its image. They have sent cease and desist letters to owners who modified their cars in ways Ferrari didn't approve of. They have blacklisted journalists who gave negative reviews. They reportedly keep a blacklist of celebrities who are not allowed to buy their limited edition models because of how they might represent the brand. But Ferrari's tactics worked in the era of print magazines and controlled press events. In the era of YouTube, they look like bullying. When a creator like Tavarish or Whistling Diesel takes a brand's most sacred object and treats it like a disposable prop, the brand faces a brutal choice. Do they sue the creator and risk a Streisand effect where the legal action generates more views than the original video? Or do they stay silent and watch their carefully curated legacy get dragged through the mud for millions of subscribers? There is no good answer. The warning that McLaren sent to Tavarish was a shot across the bow, but it was also an admission of weakness. It told the world that McLaren is watching. It told the world that they care deeply about what happens to their cars after they leave the showroom. And in doing so, they validated the very thing that Tavarish's channel is built on. The idea that the story of a car doesn't end when it gets wrecked. Tavarish responded to the warning the only way he knows how. He made another video. He didn't back down. He didn't remove the badges. He acknowledged the legal threat, explained his position, and then kept working on the car. That is the asymmetry of this new conflict. The car brand has lawyers, trademarks, and deep pockets. The YouTuber has narrative control and the sympathy of the audience. In the court of public opinion, which is the only court that matters for a creator, the giant corporation almost always loses. Viewers instinctively side with the little guy, the solo mechanic in a dirty garage, against the faceless entity in a glass tower. Even if McLaren is technically correct about their intellectual property, they cannot win the viral war. Every legal letter they send becomes content. Every threat they make proves the YouTuber's point that the system is rigged against the independent owner. This dynamic has fundamentally changed the risk-reward calculation for creators. It is now safer to ask for forgiveness than permission, and even safer to broadcast the entire conflict live. But we would be naive to think that the car brands are simply going to accept this new reality, lying down. The next phase of this conflict will likely involve a two-pronged strategy: technological lockdown and selective partnership. On the technology side, we are already seeing the rise of subscription features. BMW tried to charge a monthly fee for heated seats. Tesla locks performance upgrades behind paywalls. The logical conclusion of this trend is a car that you don't truly own at all. You license it. The manufacturer retains remote access to its systems and can theoretically disable features, track your driving habits, or even shut the car down entirely if it detects unauthorized modifications. This sounds like dystopian science fiction, but it is already happening with digital licenses in the software world. If a car company can argue that the software running your engine is licensed, not sold, they can control how you use the physical hardware forever. The second prong is selective partnership. Car brands are not going to stop working with YouTubers entirely. They are going to be more careful about who they work with. They will pour marketing dollars into creators who play nice, who show the cars in a flattering light, who don't ask difficult questions about reliability or repair costs. They will starve the rebels of access. They will offer exclusive interviews and test drives only to those who sign strict non-disclosure agreements. They will attempt to create a walled garden of approved content, leaving the rebuilders and the critics to fight over the scraps of totaled insurance auctions. The question is whether the audience will accept that division. So far, the evidence suggests they won't. The most popular automotive channels on YouTube are not the ones getting press cars from Porsche. They are the ones buying beat-up wrecks on Copart and figuring it out as they go. Authenticity has a gravity that polished corporate content cannot escape. What makes the McLaren warned Tavarish moment a true turning point is the precedent it sets for liability. Consider the legal nightmare lurking beneath the surface of these rebuild videos. When a YouTuber rebuilds a car and then drives it on public roads, who is responsible if the brakes fail? If his amateur wiring causes an electrical fire that burns down a garage, the creator assumes the risk, but the brand's logo is still on the wreckage. In the past, such incidents were isolated accidents. Now they are filmed, uploaded, and immortalized. A single catastrophic failure in a YouTuber's rebuilt hypercar could trigger a wave of lawsuits arguing that the manufacturer did not do enough to stop the creator from misusing their product. This is the dark mirror of the right to repair movement. While advocates argue for the freedom to fix, manufacturers argue for the freedom to protect their reputation from incompetent repair. They will point to Tavarish's P1 and say, "This is not a car. It is a death trap held together by hope and YouTube money. And we want our name removed from it." Whether a court would agree with that argument is an open question, but it is a question that will eventually be answered. The lawyers are circling. The contracts are being rewritten. The era of the happy-go-lucky YouTube mechanic who just wants to have fun with cars is coming to an end, replaced by a more adversarial landscape where every bolt tightened is a potential liability and every video uploaded is a piece of evidence. We are also watching the collapse of the traditional automotive press in real time, which accelerates this conflict. 10 years ago, if a journalist wrote a critical piece about McLaren, the brand could threaten to pull advertising or deny access to future launches. That threat carried weight because the magazine needed the brand to survive. The YouTuber, however, is immune to that specific threat. Tavarish doesn't need McLaren to send him a press car. He buys his own disasters. He doesn't need their technical data. He reverse engineers it. He has built an audience that is interested not in the fantasy of hypercar ownership, but in the brutal reality of it. This independence is both his strength and his vulnerability. His vulnerability is that without manufacturer support, sourcing parts is a nightmare of eBay hunting and custom fabrication. His strength is that the audience loves watching him struggle against a system designed to make him fail. The narrative arc of the Rebuild channel is a classic David versus Goliath story, and David is winning the ratings war. But Goliath has not swung back yet. The legal warning from McLaren was a polite tap on the shoulder. The real fight will begin when one of these creators gets sued into bankruptcy or when a manufacturer successfully lobbies for a law that criminalizes the bypassing of automotive software locks. When that happens, the automotive community will have to choose a side, and the choice will define the next 50 years of car culture. Looking at the broader cultural landscape, this battle is a microcosm of a larger struggle happening across every industry. Farmers are fighting John Deere for the right to repair their own tractors. Phone manufacturers are fighting consumers over the right to replace batteries. The entire concept of ownership is being eroded by the fine print of end-user license agreements. Cars are just the most visible battleground because they are expensive, emotional, and highly visible. When Tavarish stands next to his flood-damaged P1, he is not just a mechanic. He is a philosopher arguing that possession should mean power. He is arguing that if you pay $1 million for a pile of carbon fiber and wires, you should be able to do whatever you want with that pile, including breaking it, fixing it, and broadcasting the whole messy process to the world. McLaren is arguing the opposite. They are arguing that the brand is a separate entity from the physical object, that the brand must be protected from the mistakes of the amateur, and that the legacy of the P1 is too precious to be left in the hands of a YouTuber with a wrench and a tripod. In the end, neither side is purely virtuous. The car brands are not evil for wanting to protect their engineering reputation. They spent billions developing these machines, and seeing them butchered on YouTube must sting. But the YouTubers are not vandals either. They are enthusiasts of a different breed, ones who believe that passion should not be gatekept by corporate approval. They believe that the best way to honor a great car is to save it from the scrap heap, even if the process is ugly. The warning McLaren sent to Tavarish was a line drawn in the sand. It said, "This far and no further." But Tavarish stepped over that line, kept filming, and kept rebuilding. And now the rest of the automotive world is watching to see what happens next. Will McLaren escalate? Will they seize the car? Will they sue for trademark infringement? Or will they realize that the war is already lost, that the cat is out of the bag, and that the future of car culture belongs to the rebels with cameras, not the executives with PowerPoints? One thing is certain. The days of quiet ownership are over. Every modified exhaust, every rebuilt engine, and every flipped wreck is now content. And content, as both the brands and the YouTubers know, is the only currency that really matters anymore. The gauntlet has been thrown. The engine is running. And this race is just getting started.